Welcome to Leaving a Legacy, Navigating Estate Planning with Rose Harper Law.
Hello and welcome to Leaving a Legacy, Navigating Estate Planning with Rose Harper Law. Owner Rose Harper is joining me today to discuss estate planning for parents, how to protect your children at every age. Rose, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't scare you away after the first one.
I'm here.
All right. Let's talk about estate planning for parents. Why is estate planning especially important for parents of minor children, and what unique concerns do parents need to address in their plans?
Yeah, so I think that, when we have younger children, we're younger too, right? And we just think like, oh, nothing's going to happen. We don't really need to get this done right away. But, the thing is that if an emergency does occur, your children are really going to be vulnerable if you don't have a plan in place. Actually, putting my own personal estate plan into place gave me such a peace of mind. And I realized how important it was for every parent that has minor children. I have 3 kids. My 2 youngest, though, are 5 and below. And we had to move kind of far from family and friends. So we didn't have people nearby that we could necessarily rely on. So really thinking about, who do we know? What other parents or neighbors could come and get our kids in an emergency? Because if my husband and I go out on a date night and get into a car accident and we're in the hospital, well, when the police arrive at our house, they can't just leave our kids with a random babysitter. Our kids are going to have to go into foster care for the night or whatever the state, says they need to do for the night. And we don't want that. We'd rather have them with our neighbor that knows our kids, sees them every day. They play with their kids. So, getting the legal authority in place for the people that you want to have your kids. The other thing to think about is, sometimes people are in a situation where, if you really thought about it, a judge who doesn't know you or your family is just basically going to have people's resume. So if you have no plan in place and a judge says, okay, well, their sibling is, a physician or a lawyer, and, they're doing well for themselves and they're married with kids. So your kids are going to go live with them, right? Because you've passed away now. But maybe you personally know, actually, they're the last person that I would want to raise my kids. I actually want my, church group member who we're together with all the time to have our kids. But if you don't get your estate plan in place, a judge is not going to know that. And nobody else is going to know it either. So really thinking about those important things and those important decisions, documenting what you want. Who do you want to raise your kids? What do you want to happen with your assets? If you have no plan in place, guess what? In New York and New Jersey, your kids can inherit at the age of 18. I mean, think about what decisions you'd be making at the age of 18 if you had $1 million in your pocket.
Not good ones.
Yeah, probably not great.
I wouldn't have, I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, so just getting people to realize it's really not that huge of an investment of time and money to get an estate plan in place for your family that greatly protects them if an emergency occurs. And hopefully you don't need it right away, right? And you'll update it over the years, but have that security is essential for your family. And if you're on a journey of becoming, financially secure, whatever the case may be, an estate plan is important for that process.
Can you talk about the will aspect of it? How can a will help ensure that your minor children are cared for if something happens to you? And piggybacking off that, what role does naming a guardian play in the process?
So naming your guardian, that's the person who's going to step up and raise your kids if you're not able to. It's incredibly important. It's a big decision. And that's why I really strongly feel like you as the parent should be making that decision now. You should be picking who is going to raise your kids. And you want to think about, who should I pick? Should I just pick my sibling because they're my sibling? Well, maybe, yeah, but you can also consider, do they have the same values and lifestyle? Are they going to make the same decisions in terms of educating and, bringing up my kids that I would make? Or are they not? If you're married with kids and you have a certain lifestyle you want for your kids as they grow up, and your sibling is, traveling the world for their job and has no time and would just hire a nanny, that might not be what you want. You have to really think of those things. So that's the process that I help my clients go through, when they're choosing the guardian. And the will, documents and gives legal authority. So it's just not a matter of thinking about it and telling people what you want. You have to document it. Your will has to be documented and signed in front of witnesses, in front of the notary. So there's a process here. It's not good enough just to tell people or to think about it. You have to give the legal authority for the people that you want to raise your kids.
I don't know if I can think of anybody I would want raising my kid. No, I'm just kidding.
No, actually, no, that's like the truth though, right? Because it's like, well, you are like, no one, it's imperfect.
Right.
Because
It's
you
imperfect.
as a parent aren't going to be there. So no matter what, we're already starting out with, this is not ideal.
Right.
But who is the next best person that you can think of? Because you don't, a person that you're going to be able to make a better decision than, just like a random state approved guardian.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, I don't know. You seem cool, Rose. I might put you down.
Well, the other, that's a funny thing. The other thing is that, your guardian, just because you pick someone doesn't mean that they're going to like accept.
Right. You got to pick somebody that is going to accept. Yeah. So you're saying there's no chance. Is that what you're saying? You're not going to.
So, like that's something to think of too. Like if you have one sibling that has 6 kids already, you really want to talk with them about that. Like, can they genuinely take on 3 more kids or 4 more kids? So, but during this process, that's like I encourage my clients, like you have to actually talk to the people that you want to choose and have those discussions with them. That way they can be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Like that's the time to be honest, for sure.
Yeah.
So what is the importance of setting up a trust for minor children? We talked a bit about trusts in the last episode. How do trusts help manage assets until the kids are of legal age?
Yeah, so setting up a trust for minor children is really, really important because it secures them financially. So usually minor children cannot inherit until at least the age of 18, but 18 is still really young. Like you don't want an 18-year-old having access to $1 million. So by creating the trust, what you can do is have your trustee, you pick a financial trustee who's going to be in charge of managing that trust. So during the course of your kid's life, they can still access the money to pay for their school, their life, whatever the case may be. But the majority of that money is kept in the trust and continues to grow. So when you pick, your trustee, you want to pick someone who is not reckless with money, who makes wise decisions, or who at a minimum would know, okay, I need to actually get an advisor and reach out to a financial advisor for how to grow this money. So the money continues to grow. And then with the trust, you can pick what ages your children will either get outright distributions, but once they get distributions of the money, that money is unprotected, meaning that if they're going through a divorce, when they get, $100,000 or $1 million from it, that money is potentially subject to, that spouse getting access to it. Versus if the money stays in the trust, while it's still in the trust, it's protected. So of course you try to encourage people, to keep the money in their trust and just use what they need along the way. But, going through this process of developing the trust and figuring out what age do you want your kids to become a co-trustee so they can learn alongside the trustee you chose before becoming a sole trustee themselves. So you can have that learning period and they can get through college in their 20s and still be like working hard and not just thinking like, oh, I have $1 million of access. And also it's not even like your kids. I'm sure like your kids are going to make amazing decisions. They're perfect. They would never do anything wrong. But if you think about it, an 18-year-old inheriting $1 million, well, once somebody hears about that, they're open to predators. Like people can take advantage of them, scams, having them, go come invest in my business idea, and so it might not even be a matter of them being reckless. Maybe they just be naive and get taken advantage of.
Yeah, make a poor decision.
And basically the trust can help prevent that.
All right, so let's go over for parents who have children under 18. We talked about some of them, but can you kind of go over the essential documents that people, should consider when creating their financial plan?
Yes. So, You definitely need a will, because then you're going to choose your guardians. You're going to be the decision maker and pick who's going to raise your kids. So important. Then you should consider getting a trust, especially like if you have a life insurance policy that can't just get paid out right to your kids. It has to go into a trust. So if you don't create it and you don't have a testamentary trust in your will, you're going to have to go through the surrogates court to get a trust created anyway. So something that you can do in advance, and that way you have more control over what age they're getting things, what decisions they can make with it. There's a lot you can put into a trust. And then the other thing is, obviously you still need your healthcare power of attorney, your financial power of attorney, your complete plan. You need that complete plan if you have kids.
So, okay, now when the kids reach the age of 18, obviously they're legally considered adults. So then what changes in their parents' estate plan is needed?
So something that we do for anyone who has children above the age of 18 is we'll offer to do a little package for their young adult, because once your children are over the age of 18, you do not have authority to access their medical records, their financial bank accounts and institutions and things like that, unless you have a custodial account. But it just depends, especially like if you have a 25-year-old, say for example, your 25-year-old child who's single and moved to New York City to pursue their career, and you're living in Indiana, well, you need a legal document to go help them out if something happens, right? So definitely want to think about getting legal documents in place for your adult children. That way, they need the financial inventory. How do you even find their stuff? How do you handle it? What do they want to happen? And then they can make those decisions. And for them, obviously, they probably don't own property. They don't have kids yet. They're not married. So their plan can be more like streamlined and simple. Maybe they probably don't need a trust, right? You're just looking at basic powers of attorney and things like that. Maybe you will, but that's something that you would want to do for any of your adult kids.
Yeah, that's interesting. You don't think about that sort of thing. Your analogy of kid moves to New York, parents still back in Indiana, that kind of stuff happens all the time. But you don't think about the fact that you need some sort of document if you want to go and take care of anything that could happen,
Yeah, because accidents, I do other areas of law, like accidents happen every day. I mean, you don't even have to be a lawyer to see, there's a ton of accidents, things happen. Even people catch a virus now, you catch a virus, you're in a hospital, things come up, and, your family might need to help you out and intervene. And you want to have the legal authority in place before an emergency, because once the emergency is occurring, it's chaos.
It's too late. Yeah. So what should parents consider when they're naming beneficiaries for children who are now adults, especially when it comes to maybe large sums of money, family heirlooms, anything that's important, those kind of things?
Yeah. So definitely thinking about how the inheritance will be managed is important. For large sums of money, definitely a trust is a better way to manage those assets, especially if your kids are young and they're not really financially responsible yet. That way you can appoint someone, a trustee, to manage those funds in the trust. And for family heirlooms, you'd want to consider who would appreciate and maintain the heirloom. And obviously it's great to have a conversation with your family members. That way there's no contention either. If one child just assumed internally, oh, I'm getting grandma's hand-me-down china set, but you were intending to give it to your firstborn, then that's going to cause a problem. So having a part of going through the estate planning process with our firm is we really encourage open communication. That's the way you're going to avoid conflict. You have to have those conversations now. And then also it might be something where you intended to give it to one child, but that child doesn't even want it. And then the other child really wanted it. But those are things you're not going to know until you talk about it.
Right. Until you actually have a conversation.
Yeah.
On that note, when you sit down with parents, how do you advise them to communicate with their children about their estate plan, especially as they move into adulthood, so that all of these problems you just mentioned could be avoided?
Well, definitely communication is so important, in every single aspect of our life. The way we communicate is really important. But having those important conversations, it can be hard, but it's a good thing in the end. And especially like something I posted recently on my LinkedIn, like, like parents, if your kids do not get along now, imagine what it's going to be like if you have no estate plan in place and you pass away. It's going to be horrible. So it's better to have an uncomfortable conversation now. It'll give you a lot of perspective. That way, everyone can at least start thinking about what should happen, who should do what. Maybe not everyone's going to end up being super happy with the plan, but at least they'll know a plan is in place and they'll start coming to terms with it now versus, when you're not around to tell them.
How often do you see conflicts like that between siblings because something wasn't in place?
Every day. Yeah, every day. So surrogates court is like, I don't know, the Maury Show or something like that. I mean, you would be shocked. So everyone thinks like, oh, well, you're just like dividing these things like it's not a huge deal, right? People will fight over everything.
Yeah.
They will. And even if you think, well, our family is really peaceful. Well, guess what? Your parents and your spouse's parents, they both want to raise your kids and your siblings want to raise them too. And they're all going to beef it out and it's going to be a mess. Even if you're not just talking about things like who should be the guardian, like there's just so many things that come into play and people fight over everything. And because it's emotional, because someone has passed away.
Yeah. It's a horrible time. Yeah.
It's not even about the cup, right? But it's not even about, wanting to be the person chosen or whatever. It's just like we've had this major loss and everyone's just trying to do the right thing, really. Yep. But because there was no plan in place, everyone thinks that what you wanted is something different. And that's what ends up getting played out in court and causes delays and costs a lot of money.
Yeah. And heartache.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to Leaving a Legacy, Navigating Estate Planning with Rose Harper Law. To connect with Rose and the team, head to roseharperlaw.com and be sure to like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review as well. Rose, it's always great to hear from you. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.